So it's a little early, but I'll be okay. I'll survive. I didn't want to wake the kids up either. So no coffee yet this morning.
I was up at 3:30 this morning, and I think all the kids woke up around about 4:00, maybe 5:00. So everyone's been up pretty early this morning. Yeah. Yeah, Mrs. had a nanny nap today when they had a sleep, so I'm still going.
Good. You didn't have a nap today?
Nah.
What time is it there now?
Just after 9 p.m.
Okay. You'll be tired.
Oh, well, I'll be tired too tomorrow morning.
Yeah, you'll be going to bed too. See, we can both go to bed after this. I'll go back to bed. And you can just go to bed. Right on. Well, let's jump into this and jump into laws of suggestibility in week 4.
Yep.
Recording, good there. How'd you do on 1? Suggestibility is?
Yeah, well, I didn't know what to write down because it's talking a lot, but I got suggestibility is offering an invitation by persuasion or logical emotional sequencing for the acceptance of an idea or path for redefining subconscious belief structures.
Perfect. Yeah, that's the AIT definition. Obviously, there's lots of other ones from the dictionary and stuff. You know, easily influenced by ideas provided by other persons, characteristics of something that can be suggested, a state under hypnosis in which a person will accept suggestions of another person and act accordingly. So, yeah, you hit it on the nail for the AIT definition, which is the one we want to focus on for this week. A suggestion is like an invitation or word of mouth. I'm on number 2 here now. A suggestion is like an invitation or word of mouth so someone can choose a course of action. There are 2 basic types of suggestions, direct and non-direct. What'd you get for 3 for direct suggestions?
Direct suggestions are a command sequence of words.
Mm-hmm.
And then number 4, indirect sequences are an invitation or perhaps a softer sequence of words.
Yeah. Off the top of your head, could you give an example of one or the other?
You can pull on the spot there.
Dan,
Direct.
Dan, I'll give you 2 easily ones. Dan, give me a direct suggestion. That would be a direct suggestion, right? It's a direct question for you to. It's just like, Dan,
you're asking for
give me a direct suggestion. That's a direct suggestion in itself. Or and then an indirect would be, perhaps, Dan, you could come up with an indirect suggestion, could you not? See how it's an indirectly one. It's a lot softer. Yeah. It's not as authoritative, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So
that's what I kind of had in my head. But
yeah, and sometimes you want to give direct suggestions, and sometimes you want to give indirect ones. It just depends where there are. Sometimes direct ones will fire a guardian because of that authoritative pillar. Usually a father pillar, you can fire that guardian. And then sometimes you want to not fire the guardian or just make an indirect suggestion so it doesn't come off as hard or aggressive, if that makes sense.
Yeah, so you would use a indirect suggestion if you're like just new to the person, like you don't really have that mutual bond and respect with each other as you get, like the person doesn't know you and you don't know the person. So again,
Yeah,
when
it's
you first interact with the person, you give them indirect because it makes them feel more comfortable and they still answer your question, what you're asking pretty much.
exactly. You know, it's you'll dance around it, and then sometimes you'll get very direct if somebody's just keeps repeating a story or they're kind of caught in the loop. You might have to be very direct to just say, "Are you done?" Like, you know, once they get caught in a story or caught in a loop, you might have to be a little more aggressive with more direct suggestions, just because you want to fire that guardian, you want to get them to move out of the space that they're in right now, just because they're so
Yes.
stuck, and they just might
Yeah.
need some authority or a little more of a push that you can get from direct suggestions.
Well, could you use that in the same instance as in if you've asked a question and they're pretty much beating around the bush about the question, they're giving you everything else but the answer to that question. Pretty much, I'm just saying because I'm just recollecting. When I was saying Travis Fox when he talks, and he asks someone a question, but they don't give you that answer. Or they don't give him that answer, so they'll mumble jumble. Then he'll pretty much ask the question again, and then they do the same thing, and then he'll go third time. He'll ask that direct question, like
Mm-hmm.
with more authority, I guess, to get that guardian to snap.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of his famous ones is, you know, when he says whatever question and somebody says, I don't know. And the next question he always hits it is, well, if you did know, what would you say? You know, it's the same question. And I've seen him say that 3 times in a row. Well, if you did know, what would you say? I don't know. Well, if you did know, what would you say? And sometimes he'll say that 3 times in a row and he'll get the answer. So yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. You just keep asking questions, and sometimes you got to get a little more direct. And sometimes the direct one fires the guardian, so you ask it indirectly, and you'll get the answer. So it's just a couple different ways you can ask them.
Yep. Awesome.
Number 5, what'd you get, Dan?
One of the things you find direct and indirect is a word or words shifting. A direct suggestion used, they are ready to go, meaning they are committed, settled, and are in agreement.
Right. So if somebody's, you know, ready to reflect or they're wide open, they want you to really ask the questions, you can get pretty direct. If, you know, they're still up in their head and you're trying to drill down a little bit, you know, and that invitation is not quite accepted, which is that part of in agreement, you got to make sure that invitation that they want to reflect, they want to ask, or for you to ask them the questions. So until that agreement is made, you know, you're going to stay out on that indirect side or that softer side of the questioning. Like you said, you're still probably building some rapport. An indirect suggestion is used when anxious or nervous. They understand the process and are ready to go, but still are in guardian mode. So just stay a little softer, a little more indirect when you can sense and are reflecting that back to them.
Yep.
Number 7, what did you get there?
I missed this one.
Okay, no worries. Number 7, direct suggestion is authoritative. In brackets, you can put father pillar. And that doesn't mean it's their father or their dad as the pillar. It just, they might have an authoritative figure in their life that is that father pillar. Could be a teacher, could be a priest or a minister from a church. That can also attach to the religion pillar. But it's anyone in their life that can had an authoritative role in their past or in their now too. So indirect suggestion is passive, or you can put mother pillar there. And again, it doesn't mean it has to be their actual mom. It can be an aunt or grandma, whoever that kind of played that mother role, maternal role in their life. Alrighty. And then direct and indirect suggestions give you the flexibility to move around whatever conscious objections that may or may not bring. What personality type they may or may not bring, and also their understanding or lack of understanding of hypnosis or hypnotherapy process. The components of suggestibility: associative and disassociative. Can you give me number 8, Dan?
Yeah, association means to come alongside building rapport and associating feelings of time and space.
Right. Disassociation.
Disassociation means creating space from building a non-rapport and disassociating that feeling with time and space.
Right. So example of association suggestion. Number 10, we lead the client to an emotional experience and the feeling and the beliefs associated with that experience. Almost like we want them to relive that experience. We want them to feel that emotion. So we'll associate them into that sequence. And then this comes handy when seeking instantaneous integration of feeling, actions, and beliefs.
What was that? Because I missed that. So seeking.
This comes in handy when seeking instantaneous integration of feelings, actions, and beliefs.
Awesome.
Got her?
Yep.
Okay.
And I didn't get the next one either.
In associative suggestions, you want to get them to feel the experiences. Example of disassociative suggestion. Did you get number 12?
Nah, I missed them too.
With a disassociative suggestion, you want to look and experience without reliving the emotions. And also to create options for POV change.
What did you say? POV change, was it?
Yeah, point of view change. So if they can look at it or hear it differently, this is where if somebody's really feeling the emotion or they're really stuck in that story, you might use an either indirect or direct suggestion, but you want to disassociate them from the feeling of the experience. Example of that would be if you can think of something, a memory right now that maybe just doesn't feel that great, Dan. If you can think of, and you don't even have to tell me what it is. If you can think of that memory right now, that just maybe something you still are working on, could you go to a memory right now of that experience? You could right now. Now, in that experience, are you looking at that through your own eyes, or are you looking at yourself as a third person?
Third person.
Third person, but are you starting to feel the emotions of that memory?
Yep.
Okay. How far away are you away as that third person?
Kind of like at an angle, looking down at them at an angle.
You're looking down at them on an angle.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. And what happens if you went and you moved? How far away would you say you are?
Uh, 5, 10 meters.
Okay. If you can, what if you moved 100 meters away? So you can barely see the person, you can barely see yourself, but you can still kind of see what's going on. How would that change your experience? Are those emotions and feelings as strong if you move 100 meters away?
Nah, I feel detached.
A little bit more detached, you mean?
Yeah.
So that was like just a rough example. I don't know your story because your story doesn't really matter. What I wanted to do was make you disassociate from the emotions of it, and all we did was just take you a little bit further away as far as distance, because remember, distance and time. So if we can move the distance that you're perceiving that memory, you can. That might have been just enough for you to detach a bit of the emotion. It was your words, detach, which would mean you're disassociating yourself from that situation. And I'm giving you disassociative suggestions to move you away to look at it from a different POV. That makes sense to you?
Yeah.
Any questions on that part?
Um, no. No.
No, you're good there? And obviously you're going to learn all this other stuff too, like the actual questions, the words to use and things like that. But I just wanted to give you an example of how you can feel an emotion or an experience, but if you can disassociate from it, you can, again, great word, you can detach some of the emotion through disassociation.
Yep.
You would use disassociation suggestions so that, what'd you get for 13?
You would use this suggestion so that one, you gather information on the guardian.
Mm-hmm.
Was there any more to that? I feel there was.
And then guardians and actions around it without it having them or without having them dive into the story.
So what was that?
So we can gather info on the guardians
Yep.
and actions around it without having them dive into the story. Or pull away from emotional structure to find the belief structure behind it. So if we can disassociate from the emotions of it all, we can still keep diving down to the belief structure of it.
So, so would you do this step if you've hit like a very emotional guardian, I guess?
um,
Or would you try to avoid hitting that emotion?
Depends. Depends. You know, maybe someone is just really stuck in a story and it's just on a loop, and you want them to say, "Okay, here's the emotion you should feel of that story." Or if they're in the story and all they are feeling the emotion, that's when you just want to take them out of that story. So you might get a little more directive. But as far as if they're just in the story or they're just in the emotions of it, they're reliving it. Like there's no space for them to go further down to look at the belief structure that's driving the emotion, that's driving this this infinite loop. So I guess to answer your question, you're going to be doing suggestions because pretty much every question's a suggestion, right? So you're literally going to be doing suggestions constantly. You're constantly suggesting. You're constantly doing indirect and direct, and it's just whatever the person's reflecting back to you. If they hit the wall and the invitation's not accepted, then you just, okay, and you back away. Once the invitation's gone, you can't proceed because you're just going to be jumping into their story. So if they don't accept the invitation or are in agreement, you can chuck maybe a question or two to see if that invitation can be accepted. But after that, reflection over, okay, cool, maybe we can come back to this when you're ready. But you don't force it. It's one of the biggest parts of architecting is the invitation isn't there, you back right off. They're not ready, and oftentimes you're not ready because you have to accept the invitation too. If you're not in the space to reflect, don't reflect.
Yeah. Gotcha.
In dissociative suggestion, you do not want them to feel the experience of past feelings. Exactly, like they've relived this story 1,000 times, if not more. They've relived the emotions of it 1,000 times, if not more. So if we can pull away and detach or dissociate the emotion, you'll create some space and some room for some reflection.
So, yeah, so if you're speaking to someone, all right, and let's go, you say, how are you feeling?
Mm-hmm.
So you pretty much say, good day, how you feeling? And they say, oh, you're not so good. And then you might go, oh, what seems to be, I don't know, um, what seems to be the issue? Why you don't feel so good? And then they get into saying, oh, they're depressed, they're anxiety, this and that. That would mean they're living that experience over and over because they're pretty much diving straight into it, right? So then would you go, oh, well, instead of asking why they feel that way, would you go, would you use like what was it, a indirect, and then like take them away from that feeling as much? So I don't know, perhaps, how would you put it? Say like perhaps, why do you think you feel that way or something like that? Or
Yeah, you could. That would be pretty fast to go into that. Like, you might want to hear the story once, because that's if somebody, and that's a good example. If somebody's like, bang, 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 like, oh, I'm not so well. Oh, what's on your mind, or what's going on that's bothering you? Oh, I'm just depressed. Okay, you might want to hear their story, right? Because most people, they just want to be listened to. You might want to hear this story, or at least a little bit more, because that's a not a lot to go off of as far as what you want to reflect back. So if they go through their whole depressive story, you might just catch them off guard, because most people that went into their story that quickly have repeated it a million times, and they just love, for some reason, they love sharing that. And it all depends at the end of their story or halfway through. Just say, okay, cool. I've now heard you say kind of the same thing like 3 times. How does this story serve you any longer? You might get really direct with them, or you might have to go indirect. So to say, to just say, this is when you use this, and this is when you use this, that's already putting us in boxes. And you got to always just reflect what's given back to you. There's no real right or wrong, just what the indirect and indirect, or direct and indirect, are designed for, and associative disassociative is designed for. that's just the kind of the construct you can go off of understanding what to use in certain situations. And you'll feel it too, Dan. You'll know when somebody's stuck and you want to bring them out of the story, or that maybe somebody needs a hard question. And then sometimes people are really guardianed up and you got to be a little more passive. And that's when those indirects comes in. So to give you an actual answer would not be good advice, because you'll be using these constantly and you'll just feel it when it's ready, because you're just reflecting it back to them.
Yeah.
In dissociating suggestion, you do not want them to feel experience. Yeah, we just said that. Future and past pacing. Pacing is
Creating an emotional experiences or eventual belief structure for new. Doesn't make sense.
Sorry, what was that?
So that didn't make sense. Creating emotional experiences or eventually belief structure for new comes.
Right. So creating an emotional experience and eventual belief structure for new outcomes. So if we went back to your memory, whatever that is, right? And you have a certain amount of feelings when you were 5 meters away, or however far years away you were looking at yourself, right? Now, you said there was more of a detached feeling when you moved 100 meters away. Now, if we can go back to that experience and you're looking at yourself 100 meters away, is that detached emotion still there, Dan, or is that emotion followed you out to 100 meters?
Oh, no, it's still detached.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, does that and now if you can just imagine for a moment, we can always go back to the 100 meters. If you can go and just imagine for a moment going into that person, yourself, that boy, and start looking through your own eyes instead of third person, how does that change your experience?
Very strong emotion.
Mm-hmm. So now let's go back to that 100 meters, because that doesn't feel good when you're looking through your own eyes. And let's take it out to 100 meters so you can see yourself again. Does that emotion come down a little bit?
Yeah, it has. Still, I feel a force that's trying to drag me closer though.
Mm-hmm. Okay, what if we move back even further? Move back as far as you can. If you can, move back as further as you want, but you can still just see the experience, but move back as far as you can so you don't feel that pull of the emotion. And let me know when you get there.
Yeah.
Okay. So in that last sequence, I used two, Dan. I said, if you can, move back as far as you need to detach from the emotion. If you can is a more of an indirect suggestion, because of course you can. Of course you can move back. You can play with your memories. You can move back and look at that scene from 200, 300, 500 meters away. But your conscious mind or your guardians, if it hears if you can, it's like then you're almost firing a performance guardian of like, well, fuck, of course I can. Of course I can move back 200. So you're almost coaxing in the guardian to say, well, fuck yeah, I can move back as far as I can. But from the sound of it, I say, if you can, move back as far as you need to. When I say if you can, Your mind, it doesn't sound very harsh. It sounds very indirect um, as a question, but as it's heard and processed in your mind, you're like, well, of course I can. Absolutely, I can move back as far as I can. And you'll learn that more in another module. And then the last command I gave you was, let me know when you get there. So I'm telling you, let me know when you get there. That's a more of a direct, even though it doesn't sound that harsh, that's a direct suggestion. So I gave you two, and then you figure it out. I still don't even know what your story is. I don't, honestly, you don't have to tell me because it has nothing to do with the story. Is that starting to make click and make sense, Dan?
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Was there any questions about that?
Nah. Nope.
Clear as mud?
Yeah. Pretty clear.
um, so give me 15. Pacing is used to?
To let go, to override, and to delete old actions, values, or beliefs for new behaviors.
Right. So also pacing there in your example that will go on. Now, when you go back to that memory or that experience, now you have options. You have different POVs. I bet you've never looked at that story from 100 meters away, have you not?
Nah.
And I don't know how far back you moved to escape the pull of the emotion. But now you have two or three different points in that story to look at that story however you want to. Will that
Yep.
will that drastically change your belief structure to that story? No, because we just kind of were playing a little bit with an example. But now you can start to picture, if you can, a full reflective session when we've had them when we've looked at things, we've done some different reflecting on, which gives people options to let go, gives them options to overwrite past experience or memories. Like from now on, whenever you look back at that experience from your example, um, you've overwritten some of the story. You've added a piece to it. You've added a new POV. I didn't do it. You did it. I still don't even know what we're talking about. Right? So that's kind of pacing. That's pacing and reflective in exactly what we did. Did you give me an example of future past pacing?
No, I didn't. I haven't got to that stage.
Okay.
I was, yeah, I was thinking about it. I never really got pen to paper.
No worries. So we kind of went over one of past pacing, right? Future is just coming. Well, basically, you're coming alongside and you're reflecting for them, and then you're driving that new POV or that new belief or that new suggestion into the future. For example, in the future, when you look at that example that you gave me, you're going to either choose to look at it through your own eyes, which is extreme, a lot of emotion. You'll look at it the 5-10 meters when you're kind of looking down at it, which was your original POV, or you're going to look at it from 100 meters or however further away you went. That's now your choice. Now you have four options that you've overwrit that will future and past pace yourself into the future, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Now you look like the one that's tired, and I'm the one that's wide awake.
Yeah.
Does that all kind of make sense, Dan?
Yeah. Yeah, I've only watched that that video once, so I've got to go back over it again. So
Sure. Because yeah, like pacing, dissociative, associative, direct, indirect. This is a big week. This is suggestibility is a lot, so I would strongly suggest, strongly suggest, rewatching it. Get this locked down. Get it in your DNA because this is a big foundational week for the rest of the weeks.
yep.
Yippers. And
Awesome.
if you watch it again and you got questions, and this goes for you too, Tony, if you're watching the replay, if you guys got any questions, reach out to us. This is exactly what we're here for. Sometimes you don't have that many questions when you're in the meat of it in class, but afterwards, or if you rewatch it, if you have any questions or if it's just not making sense, please reach out because we constantly stack on all of this information. So if you're not getting some of these foundational bricks, it's hard to really stack and build on it. So if it's not clicking or it's not making sense, which is perfectly normal, we all went through it going, what the fuck are we learning here? But it's all good. You're learning better than you really think you are. So just reach out to us if you guys got any questions, okay?
No dramas. No dramas.
No dramas. That must be an Australian thing. We say no worries all the time, but no dramas. That must be you guys.
Oh, both. I'll say no worries or no dramas.
Fair enough.
Too
Awesome.
easy, Cobb.
What's that?
Too easy, Cobb.
Too easy. What's the last word?
Cobb. C-O-B.
Too easy cob. Like a corn cob? What's a cob?
Cobb. Cobber.
What is that?
Short. So it's Cobb short for cobber, which cobber is obviously C-O-B-B-A-R, I think it is. Cobber's like mate.
Okay. I just thinking corn cob.
No.
No, it's all good.
Nice. Too easy. Oh, how'd you go over the weekend with? Oh, no, what time? Yeah, no, it was before the weekend with Travis Fox coming over.
Oh, it was good. He just left yesterday. So yeah,
Yeah.
we had a really good time. He was down Monday to Saturday, so we actually got the coffee company going. We picked up our first order. So we're selling
Oh
that.
yeah, I was. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, keep going. Yeah, that's what it reminded me. I wanted to ask you about that. That was all. Yeah, keep going.
And then we went out and looked at the land for where we're building Architect's Castle. And then other than that, we just kind of chilled out and enjoyed each other. And he got to see the kids. And yeah, it was awesome. Brenda had to leave a little early because her granddaughter, she's having a granddaughter. And it wasn't supposed to be here till today, actually, but it came a few days early. So Brenda only was here for a day or two, and then she had to leave. But Travis stayed till Saturday, and yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Oh, nice. I didn't see